to go ahead and warm up each saw and take a few cuts, get them warmed up and ready to go. And then we'll do some cutting into this chestnut oak, which actually cuts pretty easy. And then I've got some harder maple right here. We'll cut into that. I got some poplar over there that will cut into that. And I even have some walnut here that I need to cut into and kind of get some of the firewood out of it. And then I got a couple saw logs, so I need to kind of break it down a little bit. But I'll be using my pickaroon. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this tool. It's great. It's got a hook on the end. There's several brands sell it. I like the Fiskar products because these handles hold up really well, especially if you miss. It happens. So if you've never seen one of these or used one of these, there'll be a description to this one in the link. Amazon sells a lot of different brands, so you can just look up pickaroon or hookaroon. They're listed under different titles, all the same thing. All right, I'm going to start this Neotech up, the MS250 clone, let it warm up. Both of these saws I'm running the main products bar, 18-inch bar, and chain. So it's also a test for me to try these new chains and bars out. So not only are we testing the saws themselves, we're testing out a new bar and chain. So keep an eye out on that as well. New bars and chains, you just want to make sure it's getting good oil to it. All right, now let's crank up the 260 clone. See how that cuts. This stuff, this chestnut oak actually cuts pretty good. It's pretty easy to cut. So, but I want to start off with it first to warm the saws up. helps to remember my headset. Ah. It happens. All right, I want to run them a little bit more because while I'm videoing, I also want to be bucking up firewood and not wasting the gas. So I'm going to go ahead and do half of this chestnut oak to get it out of my way. I'm going to cut it with the MS-260 first, and then we'll crank up the MS-250. You got to keep in mind these are new bars and chains, so they're dragging just a little bit, but they'll wear in. And put my hat off, put my earmuffs on. All right, this does have a decomp here. This is where this thing's nice. Pull that stuff out of the way. Woo! All right, let's cut up the rest of this. We'll see how good I did as far as the measurement goes. I have one of these. Why am I not utilizing it? This is adjustable depending on what length wood you want to get. I have this around 18 inches because it works good in all the stoves as a basic length for me. Okay. Make sure I'm not hitting the chain. Almost perfect. I got to remember once that's warmed up not to use the choke at all. It'll flood out real easy. That's why I had to pull it a couple times. So that was really my fault. Each one of these brands can tend to act a little different. So you got to get kind of used to it. So there's not a lot of consistency sometimes in some of the brands. But... all right, now this maple definitely is a little harder to cut than the other stuff. So we'll start down here, work our way down, and then this one's probably about maybe 14 inches. That one jumps up closer to 18 inches. So like I said, I got to cut all this stuff up for firewood anyways. So why not run the saws? So that saw has more power, you can tell, but it's really grabby. In other words, on the low end torque, it spins up faster, and I did put the number 7 sprocket on that. I took the 8 off just so they were equal, because that's 7, and the other saw I have to test with it is also 7. So I want everything to be equal as far as the torque goes. So it's just up to the engine now to do the job. So I'm going to run the 250 the first time into this. We'll cut up 2 or 3 logs, sections, and then I'll fire that up, and we'll see how it does. The smaller bars are hard to get this in there so you don't hit the chain. Oh, come on. I say it can be kind of a pain. All right, we're good. Go figure, right? I got to get that log back up on another log real quick. I got to go grab my pole lifter, and then we'll get that up and we'll cut that with the MS 250. I forgot I had my log roller over here stuck underneath the chestnut, so I've got to cut that up real quick with the, we'll use the 260 to do that. See how it does. I still think that bar and chain's dragging a little bit. We haven't 100% figured out that issue. Quit yelling. We'll go back over to that maple now that I got that stand free, and we'll test it out against that. All right, we made it back over to the maple, so we're gonna run the 260 now into this maple log. I tell you, it's a combination of different things with these two saws. So we're going to do a little bit of noodling here in a second, but let me just kind of give you my thoughts, because you're not running the saw, so you can't feel the saw. You don't know exactly little things I'm doing to keep the chain speed up. This saw with a 20-inch bar, this 260 with a 20-inch bar, runs decent. It'll turn it, but if you get into a heavier hardwood and stuff like that, it wants to stop the bar when you really get into it. So I think the 18-inch bar on this saw it seems like it's keeping the RPM up. It's more productive, I guess you could say. Now, if you wanted to have this saw because you were taking down trees with a bigger saw, and you wanted something to go through and limb the saws up, and you wanted a 20-inch bar on it so that you didn't have to bend over as much with the saw, which, let me just demonstrate, that log is on the ground. So I'm 5'8.5", was 10, I guess I'm shrinking. So if I'm standing normal, like right here, that bar, let me back up so you can see, it's probably about 6 inches off the ground. With a 20-inch bar, when I'm standing here like this, it's about 2 inches off the ground. So that's comfortable for me if it has a 20-inch bar. The 25-inch bars are really nice on the bigger saws, but I have to kind of hold them up a little bit because I hit the ground. So to me, this particular saw is capable of running the 20, but is best with the 18-inch bar. And this saw over here, which is the 250 clone, also has the 18-inch bar, but you can tell the size right here is a lot smaller than on this one. I don't even remember the amount of teeth compared to the two. I think it's a couple teeth different. So this has got a smaller tip, which may mean if you're carving or doing something like that, or small stuff, you might prefer to have that over this one. As you can see the size difference. I think you can see the size difference. Let me hold them like that. So that could play into different things, especially when you're cutting into the logs and using this as the guide to plunge into the log. This being smaller, it's going to do that better, whereas that's a bigger radius. More teeth have to contact it. So this one, you can pretty much get on it all the way through the cut without having to back off a whole lot. This one, a couple times as I'm going through the cut, I don't know if you noticed that I kind of had to let off a little bit. These are both aggressive chains, so they're the full everything, a full comp, aggressive. I don't know what the rakers are set at. They seem pretty aggressive to me. The Bane bars I like. Unfortunately, I don't know what the deal is. I got to contact Bane. I'm waiting to get back from them. Most of theirs have an oil grease hole here, and on Amazon it showed it with the grease hole, but it didn't come with it. So I don't know if it's a manufacturer's mistake on that or not, because I wouldn't have chose it without the grease hole. This one from Bane and the other ones I have all have the small grease hole. So I will follow up with that when I find out. But these bars are really nice. They're really tough. So let me stop talking. Let's do some more cutting. I got a couple logs set up. The noodling's fun. And I'm hand splitting a lot of this down here because I like getting the workout. Who needs to pay for a gym membership when you go split some wood by hand? So I noodle some of these in half just because it's easier for me to handle. And once you break that circle up, they tend to split easier. So let's go ahead and noodle up. I got a maple here. Down here, I've got a chestnut oak. And then we'll throw a couple maples on there with each saw and see how each saw does. So I cut a lot of these right around 18 inches. You see me using the bar as a guide. I wanted to see what I had that tool set up with. So I measured it real quick with that, and it was right on the money. So I'm cutting them around 18 inches. I can cut up to 2 foot on a couple of the stoves, but I don't. So anywhere from 16 to 18 inches is probably normal for most people, depending on the wood stove or fireplace that you have and how you like to put the logs in there. Some people like long logs. They got a big fireplace. And some people like the shorter ones. If it's a weight difference in handling the wood, then you want the shorter ones. If picking up and carrying firewood is hard on you, or you need the smaller stuff, get the smaller one. So let's start down there with that chestnut oak. I'm actually going to split it twice. I'm going to split it once in half with the 260. Then we'll take the 466. I'm stuck on the big saw now. What am I talking about? The NS 846. Big difference, mister. Big difference. And then after we do this, I'm just going to start cutting all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to use each saw, switch back and forth. So if you want to hang out with me after we do the noodle, I'm just going to start cutting all kinds of stuff up and moving the camera around because I got to get this done. Because I need to get my firewood done or it's not going to be dry. Some of this oak isn't going to be dry, so I'm going to have to rely on slabs. All right, let's crank these two saws up. I'm going to start with that 260 first. I'm going to go ahead and split this in half and then quarter it again. Then I got another chestnut oak there, and we'll go ahead and do it with the 250. We'll just do a whole log section. Let me toss these over there. Woo! Over to my splitting area. About 30 foot. I gotta throw it. Nah. It's actually about 20 foot. Woo! I say this is my gym. Who needs to pay for a membership? All right, let's get this one up there. All right, let's get this 250 MS clone fired up. See how it does. It's about the same size log. It was a log right next to the other one, so should be a fair test. We'll see. I don't know why the bar's coming loose on that one. That one, the T60, the bar is staying tighter. I got a log. As long as I can make it just to the other side of that log, it throws them where I need them. It bounces off of them. All right, now I want to get out another saw that I have that's going to be equal in cc's to those. Some of you guys might know what brand that might be. It's one of my favorite brands, so find out in a second. Okay, you might recognize this saw. So this is the CS 450P from Echo. This is used. Those are new that I'm competing it with, but this is probably a good 10, 15 years old. Has a used bar, used chain. So let's run it and see, because I like my Echoes. It's got really good torque. If y'all want to time this stuff, you're more than welcome to, and drop it in the comments. But I'm going to cut me up a few sections of this log real quick with it, and we'll see how it does. Yeah, first cut was right in the middle of a knot. And this saw is running a 20-inch bar. It's not the fastest saw, but it has good torque all the way through the cut. And that's what I like. They just feel good in the hand. So now, let's move on over here. And we're gonna noodle up this piece of maple right here with that saw. Just to see, like I said, it's a used saw, used bar and chain. So it's not new like the other ones. So let's just see how it does. You can take it for what it is. Those Echoes are good saws. They're affordable and they're tough. Now, could you imagine what this saw would do with a new chain? And I believe the carb needs a little bit of work on it, but it's a used saw, and I think it's not quite as fast as the other ones, but it's really got good torque, consistently running. I believe the micro filter may need to be cleaned up, and I say I just got it. I wanted to run it a little bit, but I wanted to throw it in the mix with these 45, 50 cc saws because these are really affordable saws and they're good quality that will last. So I think you should always consider an Echo when you're looking at chainsaws. Home Depot sells them. I know if you go to walmart.com you can find them. There's usually a local store somewhere, and ours is Dixon's. Equipment, they sell Kubota, and then they sell the Echo saws here in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So if you're in our area and you're watching this, now you know who sells Echoes along with Home Depot. Home Depot and Walmart and stuff are not going to have your P series, your Pro series saws. You're going to have to go to a dealer for that. Like they'll have the CS590, but not the CS620P. They won't have the 7310, They won't have the 620p. They're just going to have the homeowner version, so you need to find you a dealer or go online. There's a lot of online dealers where you can order it direct as well. So I'm going to get cutting this up if you want to hang around, but I'm not going to use any of these saws, because some of you say, well, why would you cut all this up right at the make it harder on yourself? Well, I do it for testing for videos. Now I'm going to go get the saw that I would normally use to do this work. And if you want to hang out and see that run, you will. I think that's a pretty good lineup. That 260 is, I think, underperforming a little bit. There's some issues with it. A little bit slower, but good torque. Probably a little better than the 250 clone, which is the NS846 by Neotech. And that saw should outperform both of these, because that's 50 cc's and these are 45 cc saws. So yeah, that one will continue to be a work in progress. It does seem if I loosen the chain up a little bit, it does better. So I got a new tensioner for it and some other parts. We'll see if we can make that into a good saw, I hope. Now I'm going to head off and go grab the saw that I would normally use doing this. Normally, if I wasn't doing a comparison test with saws, I would run one of my 62 cc saws. That's the 62 cc saw from Neotech. And then I have several others, but I haven't run that one as much as the others, so I want to try it out so you get to see it run. So this is normally with a 20-inch bar. If I want to get a lot of this done, I'd be using that 62 cc saw. And now I'm looking for a lightweight option, that would be 62 cc's with a 20-inch bar. Is good power, you know, for a saw, you know what I'm saying? So if you don't want something really heavy as far as a heavy saw goes, these are great saws. I've had quite a few of them and I've been really happy with them. I need to cut that one a little bit more. Then we got this maple over here. I got a ton of stuff to cut up, so I'm just going to rip into a few of these with this saw, and I've also got to noodle a few of them because I'm hand splitting it. I like hand splitting. I enjoy getting out and working out. Don't have to pay for a gym membership, and it gets me outside where I can enjoy the outside. So some of these I'm going to noodle real quick. I'm going to cut that one down, and then I'm going to noodle these two at least in half, probably quarters, just because it's faster and easier for me to toss them over there. Do this one first. Yeah! That thing ain't light. That's a great little saw to do stuff like this with, working around. But that's 62cc. I got another saw that should blow that one away. I'm going to go grab it just for fun. Some of you probably might know what saw that is. It is heavier than that saw, so it's not something I want to run full time all the time. But I want to play with it a little bit. We'll cut that one up and we'll noodle those two right there. I need to toss these over there into my splitting area, and we'll run that other saw just a second. Now, some of you might know this saw. So this saw's got a 24-inch bar on it, and it's considerably heavier. So if I don't need to use it, I don't. Even though I get work done a lot faster. Now that's a 59cc saw versus a 62cc saw, but that shows you how much torqueier the Echo is, and plus that one's imported. So that, watching the two of those, you can see the advantage of porting these saws and how much of a difference it makes. So now I'm going to go ahead and noodle these up and get some stuff done a little bit quicker. And a bug. All right. Let's try to do both of them at one time. Hopefully it doesn't slide off. I need to get something done in a hurry or faster, I'd pull that saw out, but it is quite a bit heavier. So yeah, this depends on how soon you want to get stuff done and how worked out you want to be doing it. So I've got a ton of splitting to do and a ton of noodling to do, and no shortage of saws to do it with. So yeah, that's a fun one to play with, being it's ported and all, but I like the lighter weight of wherever I put it. The 62cc saw. What did I do? Lose it already? I don't even know what I did with the saw. Oh, it's over there. It's like, where did I put my saw? It's hiding behind a log. Oh well, y'all have a good day.